But I wanted to cover something, and I had to pull my phone out because I screenshotted it, and I wanted to talk about it because I think it was, the fitness industry is pretty funny. Everything in the fitness industry is, this person said this, so you need to do this.
Right.
And, people argue over the little nuanced things that go on.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you actually, step back and look at it, it doesn't apply to 99% of the people who are complaining about
100%,
it.
yeah.
So, Lane Norton posted something about high carb, low carb, high fat, low fat diets. So, I'm going to read the post, and I only have 2 snapshots of it because this is easier. So, he said, of the fat stored in adipose tissue, which is fat, for those of you that don't know what that means, during overfeeding, less than 2% of it originated as carbohydrate. Over 98% of it originates as fat. Thus, dietary carbohydrate is not a significant source of fat storage. While high-fat, low-carb increases fat burning, they also increase fat storage. So to recap, on a high-fat, low-carb diet, fat burning increases and fat storage increases. On a low-fat, high-carb diet, fat burning decreases, but fat storage also decreases. So what determines the net loss or gain of body fat? You guessed it, energy balance, good old calories in versus calories out. So now, somebody who sees that is going to automatically say, that means no fat. I got to just not have any fat. That's what I need to do. But who does that scenario actually apply to?
Right.
That scenario, and we had a conversation about this off topic, that scenario applies to maybe 1% of the people who are actually listening to this. And I believe that person is somebody who is in a state of either reverse dieting or maintaining after a fat loss phase. It does not apply to somebody who's already in a bulking phase or even somebody who's in a fat burning phase. But the thing that just blows my mind is this is what people argue about.
Right.
This is only going to matter 1% of the people who are listening to it. And even then, it really doesn't matter that much.
Well, see, that's the thing. And I think when he posted that information and made that post, the target wasn't necessarily to give people the information they need to better follow a diet that better suits their goal. It was more of an argument back and forth between the high fat diet community and the high carb community, because that's what most of these posts and the information people put out there now is. It's just an argument that this method is better than this method, and then a lot of times it's a rebuttal. So in his case, that was a rebuttal to people that follow like keto diets, carnivore diets, and all that stuff. But the point is with all this stuff that everybody's looking for that one approach to say is superior to another approach, and at the end of the day, it's all context driven. So in that case, that's not necessarily going to help somebody with their ideal nutrition plan, because again, it's all context driven, like you said. If you're bulking, that's not necessarily going to apply.
It doesn't matter.
You know what I mean? It's everything's on a case by case basis, and there's really no one approach that's going to be better than the other. These are all tools and information that you need to apply towards your goal.
Yeah. So if you're bulking, if somebody who's listening to this right now is on Pete's program, old school muscle gain,
Mass
gain. Sorry, I always get it confused on this. All these podcasts, and I've been calling it the wrong thing. Muscle.
Mass.
All
Yep.
right. So anyway, so if you're following something like Pete's old school mass gain program, and you're in a bulking phase right now, you can't just say, okay, so now look, I want to stay as lean as possible. I'm going to cut my fat down as low as possible, and I'm going to put my carbs super high, and I'm only going to gain muscle. It's like, no, because you're in a calorie surplus, and when you're in a calorie surplus, your body's going to store anything. Carbs, fats. It's going to add body fat. It's going to build tissue. It's going to do whatever it needs to because you're in a surplus. So it doesn't matter. You're going to gain fat anyway.
Right.
Whereas if you're on a diet, right, even if you did it the other way around, you're going to lose body fat no matter what anyway because you're in a calorie deficit. Your body's in a state of breaking anything down. Correct. So it doesn't apply to either of those scenarios. The only time it's going to apply is after you finish dieting and now you're trying to get a little bit more out of your fat loss phase and you're trying to maximize your metabolism, which we did a whole bunch of stuff on. Now is when it's like, okay, if I'm going to reverse diet, the first thing I need to add in is more carbohydrates to speed up my metabolism and prevent that kind of fat storage as I'm starting to build my metabolism back up after a diet phase. But even still, even that doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. And the one thing I just remembered, I actually wanted to say this before, and I lost my train of thought. It was a point that I thought of in my head the second you brought that up. The argument with that post is how, if you're eating mostly carbohydrates, that you're less likely to store body fat, right? If we kind of rewind time, and I've talked about this before, how like the fitness industry just comes full circle. It goes through cycles, different phases. If we talk maybe like 2010, 2011, that's when, in bodybuilding specifically, keto diets became very big. Like among competitors, everybody was following a keto diet to diet down for a contest. And the argument I heard over and over again, and the information that people would spread promoting a ketogenic diet, is they would say dietary fats are the one macronutrient, the hardest macronutrient to store as body fat. That was their argument, which goes directly against the grain of what Lane is saying in that post. And the argument was always insulin related. Protein increases insulin when you digest protein. When you take in protein, you release insulin. Carbohydrates, the same thing, right? And that's always the argument. Oh, carbohydrates release insulin, that's why you get fat. Dietary fat doesn't, at least not to the degree that protein and carbs do, right? So the argument always was, if you overeat fat because there's no insulin, you're not going to store body fat. Again, so you're seeing that same argument on both ends of the spectrum. And whether one's right or not, and whether one's backed by studies, the end result is always the same. Like you said, if there's too many calories in the equation, body fat is going to get stored. If there's a deficit of calories, you're going to burn body fat. And everyone's looking for those little details to promote, oh, this method is better than the other one. But at the end of the day, we're all after results. And that's why I've never been, a slave to one or the other. A different approach can be used at a different time. I don't like to go on an extreme end of either of them. I'm not going to go on and say, okay, I'm not going to eat any dietary fat. I'm also not going to say, I'm not going to eat any carbs. But the end result, understanding the principles and why they work, is the most important thing. But those arguments, you can argue one method over the other all day, and you can make a case for each of them, but at the end of the day, the one that produces the best results is the one that you should be doing.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was like, and people were arguing, like if you read the comments, it's like people going back and forth, like, no, and
everyone has
but it's like, right. Everyone's, besides that, everyone's arguing, and it matters zero.
Right.
And I'm just sitting there, I'm like scratching my head. That's why I texted you about it. And I'm like, what are your thoughts on this? Because I'm like, he's going to say the same thing. And you're like, doesn't matter. It only matters when you reverse that. I'm like, at least am I the only one who sees this? Everybody's arguing over nothing. If you like high fat, just eat high fat. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
Well, you know what it is, too? I mean, we've been around this for so long. And like I said, we've seen everything come in cycles and waves. So, the next trend that comes out, and I've said this before, too, the trend that comes out was here 10 years ago already. It's just making its appearance again, and we've already been there. So, like, if keto makes another wave again, right now, keto is still actually kind of popular recently, but not to the degree it was like in the bodybuilding community. I think in the bodybuilding community, people kind of understand the importance of carbs. Now it's more like the mainstream fitness community that are promoting keto. But I guarantee you, if we go back, if we go ahead, for like another 5-6 years, keto's going to come back around in bodybuilding. Same thing. In the general fitness population right now, people are big on carbless diets, keto, carnivore diets. I don't even know anymore because, like I said, it just keeps circling around. I don't know what's popular. But the old methods are going to make their way back, and I think eventually the general fitness population is going to start going back to like low-fat diets. I'm going to get the low-fat option. It makes it fitness always. There's nothing new. I've said this so many times. That's always why I talk about the old school basics, because the stuff that worked back then still works now, and anything new that comes around is actually old. If that makes sense.
I can't wait till the one body part a week thing comes back.
I'm telling you,
that's coming back soon. I'm telling you.
I've been predicting that for a while now, and it's slowly inching its way back.
Yeah.
A big training method that's back now. I think we talked about this on the other podcast. That was around a while ago. That was everybody hated on it. Was push-pull legs. When we first started bodybuilding, I
still hate that.
Yeah,
I still don't like that. I don't like it.
I've made a case for when you should use it actually, but from most people use it as like this is the best way to train, and for bodybuilding purposes, it leaves a lot of people torso dominant, where they can build muscle using those basic compounds, but then they don't look like bodybuilders, and you get a lot of bodybuilders who want to look like competitive bodybuilders using it. So that's my argument with that training program. But when we first started training, there was bro splits where, that was 90% of people did bro splits.
Yeah.
Then you would get the people the natural community, you would get the hard gainer community and all those guys that say you can't build muscle using pro bodybuilders routines, but you can build muscle using things like full body or push-pull legs. And those were kind of the two arguments people would make. And push-pull legs was one of those things where it's like, if you're a hard gainer, you should do push-pull legs. That was like what people would say. Now everybody's using it, saying that it's the optimal way to train. You know, and again, it's gonna come back in a cycle, and I think you're gonna go back to the next argument is gonna be, oh, push-pull legs is too demanding. You know, you can't train these body parts multiple times a week. Bro splits are the best for recovery. If you're a hard gainer, if you're natural, you should do a bro split. Guaranteed. Give it a couple of years.
You guys can go back into the feed and listen to the episode that we literally talked about how your training split is not building muscle. So we'll end that there and cap that off. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I wanted to bring that up because, like I said, I think it applies to maybe 1% of the people who are actually listening to it. And for the others who it doesn't apply to, don't worry about it.
Right.
Who gives a crap? You want to eat high fat? Go for it. You want to eat carnivore? Go for it. Doesn't matter. As long as you're counting your calories and tracking things, you'll be A-okay.